all the big infopreneurs we know, they understand this. They understand the cognitive mechanics of how trust works, which means that they can use their understanding to shape their content in a way that almost manipulates their audience in a way that makes it almost impossible for them not to keep buying their products. And so, if you can manage to do this, scaling to 7, multi 7, or even 8 figures per year becomes impeccably easy. So, here's how you do it. We all know that trust is this important thing that we need to have to scale our info business. Apart from you, they have to trust you. But if you really think about it, trust is the only thing that matters when it comes to getting clients. So it's the sole biggest determining factor that there is in your entire acquisition pipeline. And so if we can manage to understand how it works, we can later use that understanding to do whatever we want with this, which is a very dangerous part of business. So hopefully you're gonna use everything we're gonna say in this video for good. So to scale to 7, multi 7, or even 8 figures per year, you need to have an extreme level of understanding when it comes to how trust works. You need to be here in the trust iceberg. And so before I show you how you can manipulate your understanding of trust to create trust in your content and in your brand to get people to buy from you, you first have to understand how trust works. And so to do this, we need to use something called inversion. So think of it this way. Let's say there was a piece of content that by watching it, you were absolutely guaranteed to 2x your business. And you hold that statement to be true with every single living cell within your entire body. Now, the question is, would you click on that video that was totally legit and you believed it was legit? Well, of course you would, because you genuinely believed that the promise it made held to be true. And so, by knowing this, in this very extreme example that probably isn't too real, we can make a statement and we can understand that the only reason you would not go through any conversion mechanism is simply because you do not believe that it's going to help you get where you want to get. And so, pretty much what every ICP in the world wants, and will ever want is this. They want their pain to be alleviated and their result to be achieved with the lowest effort and sacrifice, the lowest time frame, and highest likelihood of those three being achieved. Fast, effortless, and guaranteed pain alleviation. This is all any ICP wants. I don't care who your ICP is, this is exactly what they want. And so we can then make another assumption and say that every single bit of information that we share must increase belief of them getting what they want, so let's call this B+, and must decrease belief of them getting what they do not want, and let's call this B-. So if we break this down even further, really, what they want is made up of two things. It's made up of what they're striving towards. So let's say they want to get to 10K a month, but what it's also made up of is the opposite of what they're running away from. So the reason they want to get to 10K a month is so that they can run away from their 9 to 5. Now, what they don't want is also made up of two things. It's made up of their anti-goals, but also what they're running away from. And so by taking all of this, we can then create some sort of trust equation, where we say that trust is equal to B+ minus B-. Trust is equal to their belief of them getting what they want by going through your pipeline and your ecosystem, minus their belief of them getting what they don't want by going through your pipeline / ecosystem. And so your aim with this should be to get this to 100% and get this to 0. Right? And you will also notice that these two are interconnected. So when you increase this, typically this also decreases. And when you increase this one decreases as well. This doesn't always happen, but most of the time this does happen. And if there is one thing that I want you to remember and keep as your North Star for this entire video and for however long you are in info and you're in business, is this. All of this. Hold that and repeat that to your head every single day before you go to bed. Grab a marker and just write down a notebook so that you don't remember, so that you don't forget it. This is the most important thing that everything on this video is based on. And so I want you to genuinely understand this. Now, what's even crazier is that the value we get from here, like let's imagine this as a trust value ranging from 0 to 100. And so the crazy thing is previously is that value does not scale linearly with the amount of money we make. And so typically what happens is that 80% of the trust, which mainly comes from the way you position yourself in the market, so having a unique mechanism, connecting the alleviation of the pain to the mechanism, having a unique angle and all of those things is positioning. And so this creates 80% of the trust because it makes people understand that you're their guy before they go on to explore your pipeline. And so this is the foundation for everything else. But what it does is that it only creates 20% of the results. And so probably the reason you're stuck at 20k month at the moment is because you're only doing this. And so to get to unlock that remaining 80% of the results, so they're gonna get to 100k month and even further, you will need to do this. You will need to create the remaining 20% of trust, which comes from value, and creates the remaining 80% of the results. So we see the Pareto principle in action here. And so your next question will be, well then how do I optimize both? Because you have to optimize both. And so how do you optimize those? Well, there's two mechanisms responsible for that. There is the capture mechanism and the delivery mechanism. What the capture mechanism does is pretty straightforward. It just gets people into the ecosystem slash pipeline. What the delivery mechanism does is that it keeps them into the ecosystem until they buy and until they, upsell or anything. It works throughout your entire pipeline and value ladder is what keeps them in the ecosystem. And it does that through value. And so your next question will be, well then how do you optimize those? Well, you first have to optimize this, because for this thing right here, to do its job and get to the remaining 80%, it can only do so if it has fuel, which acts as this entire thing right here. This is fuel to this that it uses to literally exponentially scale your business and just skyrocket. And so before we even think about this, we have to first do this so that this has fuel to help us scale. And so the way you optimize your capture mechanism is by optimizing two sub mechanisms within that. There's the packaging, so the title and thumbnail of each video, what gets them to click, and there is also the intro, what gets them to stay on the video. And so to optimize the packaging, all you must do, because way too many people overcomplicate this, right? All you must do is that when your ICP comes across your packaging, they must feel this speaking precisely to me, it seems different, and or slash new, it's proven, and I understand all of those while still wanting to learn more, right? So we can again use inversion to supercharge this, which is great. So think about, how do I achieve the total opposite of this? And when it comes to designing the packaging within your content, don't do what you find out here whilst following this thing right here. That's all you gotta do. And some exceptionally great example of this is here Hormone's video, where if we follow the statement, this precisely speaking to me, his ICP is probably lacking clarity. So a full guide right here and a full blueprint is the best thing for them, because it's gonna give them clarity, which what they're looking for. Then it's new, because back then not that many people were creating genuine value videos that were an hour long on how someone could become a millionaire. So it was something new and different, and it also looks new and different because it looks legit, which is the main thing we want to creating, right? We want to be following this thing with here as previously. Remember this. And so what it also does is that it showcases proof, and showcases that this is something proven, because it says, if I wanted to become a millionaire in 2024, meaning that this guy is already a millionaire, but also this works in 2024, which is a very, very big thing, because mainly strategies right now are outdated and people have that as a genuine concern of theirs. So the next thing is that they can genuinely understand all of this. So it's simply not for them to understand it incredibly quickly. That way, this understanding and this trust turns into curiosity, which makes them actually click. Unless all those three are taking place, you're not going to have the optimal click-through rate, which in short means your ICP is going to not click on your video and not get your advice back from you and completely change their life. So another great example of this, which is what we're working on for a client at the moment, is this video right here. Step by step how I made $1 million in real estate too, so you can just copy me. His ICP is also lacking clarity on how they can scale. And so by saying step by step, and so you can just copy me, it again showcases that this video is gonna bring them clarity, which means that, hey, it's for me, right? Also, we're showcasing that this is different because nobody's really doing this exact format that Charlie Morgan used to be doing in real estate, which means that this is new and different. And so it's the number one reason as to why someone would click, because unless it's new, there's nothing new for them to gain, which means that there's no belief that they're gonna get what they wanna get, because it's the same as every single thing they've already consumed, which means it's not gonna work. And so it's new. It's also proven because he's actually showing that he made $1 million, so simple. And it's also simple, so you can understand all of this. And so all of this creates this trust, but it makes the trust by being simple turn to curiosity, which then fuels the click. Simple. Now, if you do all of this correctly, what will happen is that people, and specifically your ICP, is gonna click on your content. Now, usually this is not enough to get them to watch the entire thing, because they click to sort of experiment. They're not really sure whether they're gonna watch the entire thing, so you need a tiny bit of trust to get them to actually watch the entire thing. And same as previously, there's no need to overcomplicate it. So the viewer clicks with an expectation set by the thumbnail, as we can see right here. The intro's purpose is to simply, at minimum, meet that, or even better, exceed that. So once again, we can use inversion to supercharge this. So we can say, what do I need to do to not meet at all the expectation? And just don't do that under no circumstance, and do this. Simple. And so an example of this could be, if this is the packaging, as I showed previously, but you tell me it's a cooking video in the first 3 seconds, I'm gonna click off because you betrayed me. This is not what I click for, so you're not meeting my expectation. But if in the intro, along with the promise you made here in the packaging, you tell me that I'm also getting something extra, for example, a personalized AI mentor that's gonna help me go through this entire thing and optimize everything, I'm gonna stay because you gave me something that I was not expecting, something extra. The key word here is also something extra, and that extra that also can come in the form of proof. For example, this has also helped X of my students make $1 million, or it can come in the form of extra resources. So I'm also gonna give you the AI mentor, the personalized AI mentor that's gonna help you. And so an example of this entire intro would be, if I lost all my $150 million today and had to go a millionaire within the next 365 days, this is exactly what I do, while laying down the blueprint so that it visually showcases this. And what you can say after that is the exact blueprint that has helped 1,000 of the companies I've acquired or something scale to a multi 8-figure yearly revenue. Or you can also say, and so then I'm gonna give you this entire blueprint for free, along with personalized AI mentor is gonna help you go through this entire thing so that you are guaranteed to become a builder or something. So the key word here, as I previously, and I can't just stress this enough, is extra. They must get something extra from what they expected by the thumbnail, right? So just think of how you can add that extra, that also, and just add it in your intro. And I promise you, people are gonna watch. So just, first of all, meet the expectation set by the thumbnail, and not the extra. Simple, okay. Now, what's gonna happen is that people, they're gonna click, but they're also gonna have this very big expectation that needs to be met by the video. And so this is what the delivery mechanism does. We have all of this like inflow coming from the caption mechanism, and we need to use as much of it and create as much trust from it using delivery mechanism. And so what delivery mechanism does is simply creating value within your content. And so great, people are now watching, but they expect something. They expect value. So they expect the video to help them solve a problem. Now, when it comes to this part of your content, most people will either tell you nothing, so they just tell you like, just give value, right? Simple. Or will tell you to share the wow or the what and not the how. But what actually happens when you do this is very, very dangerous. So let me just explain the consequence map real quick. And so what's gonna happen is that people are not gonna get value. But if you are very good at marketing and you're very good at positioning, and you create this like shiny objects thing like job servicing, like growth torpedoing, all those shiny objects, people will buy from you if you're very good at positioning. But what's gonna happen is that eventually the hype will die off and people will realize that the content is that shit. So slowly they will stop watching. And for every single interaction you go through with this new shiny object, more and more people will start leaving because you're just ruining your reputation, right? And so because they still have this unsolved problem, typically what's going to happen is that they will still go to someone who actually helps them with their content, genuinely helps them solve their problem through their content. And because that person created so much trust through that, they will buy from them and not from you. And so that person who they buy from creates longevity, and you, best case scenario, become the closer. All right. And honestly, brother, the reason all this happens is because people forget that what their ICP wants is value. The reason we have all of this positioning and all of this like fancy intros and thumbnails and all of that is to simply convince them that by going through our pipeline and by watching our content, they're gonna get value. And if we do not deliver through that and actually genuinely help them, they're gonna see right through that after 5 videos. And so they will leave. Because what they care about is the value. They don't care about your fancy intros, all of that. They don't give a shit about that. And so unless you focus on that, as I said previously, they will see right through that and they will stop watching it. They will go to someone who genuinely helps them. Now, you can see this as two different things. You can see this as bad, so you're like, well, how do I genuinely like scale my info business, right? Because if I share too much, I'm gonna devalue my offer. This is what you think. Or if I, share the button to how, I'm just gonna become the closer. Or you can view this as how do I become this person? Because what happens when you become this person is that the people you attract and come to your content are people who have gone through all of this, trauma because that person betrayed them through their content, but they still are committed to solving their problem. So these people are gonna be much easier to sell to because they generally have, this commitment. They're gonna get the best results, which means you're gonna be able to get the best marketing to attract more of those people, and it just snowballs. And it's just one of the many benefits this has. And so you need to become him, quite literally. So you're gonna build a genuine business, you're never gonna be seen as a guru, and you're gonna create longevity, right? These are the benefits of becoming that guy. And all you have to do this is to create content that's genuinely valuable and that genuinely helps them solve the problem. Now, hearing this, as I mentioned previously, you might say, well then, what if I devalue my offer, right? So for those of you saying this, just wait, I'll explain everything and it's gonna be totally clear to you within the next 10 minutes. And so, the reason we wanna do this is because imagine they watch your content and they solve the problem, right? Is there any better proof than this? Than someone going through your free stuff and getting an absolutely great result, right? Is there anything better that creates more believable than getting what they want and what they don't than them genuinely going through your mechanism, your free one, not even your paid one, which means that they think, holy shit, if his free stuff is so freaking good, imagine how good the paid stuff is gonna be, right? This is just the basic, thesis of this entire thing. And so for that to happen, and for them to be able to genuinely get there, because this entire strategy relies on them genuinely solving the problem, two things need to happen. And it's not as simple as just providing value, right? And so for that to take place and for them to solve the problem so we can get all this proof and get them to buy, they must be the person able to solve the problem, and they must have the critical information required to solve it. Because if they have the critical information but they're lazy, they're gonna get nowhere. On the contrary, if they're hardworking but don't know what to do, they'll also get nowhere. And so imagine this like tennis. If you are this pro tennis player, you won multiple world championships, but you have no racket, you are gonna lose to the person who just started playing tennis a week ago. No matter how good you are, because you don't have the racket, and so you cannot take that information that's in your brain, in your instinct, and in your muscles, your muscle memory, and direct it into winning the point, because you don't have the racket. It's impossible, right? On the other hand, if you have the ability to use it, so You have the best tennis shoes, you have the best racket, as you can see right here. I love playing tennis, but don't know how to play. You just picked up racket for the first time. You're never gonna be able to win a point against someone who knows how to play, simply because you're not gonna run fast enough or be in the right place to be able to hit the ball and win the point. And so what happens is that you lose the point because you don't have the information. And so for you to win the point, you need to have the information. So you need to know how to play. You need to have the muscle memory within you and your instinct. And you also need to have the ability. So you need to have like good tennis shoes. Probably not so much. This isn't as board, but especially you need to have a racket. Otherwise, you're never gonna be able to channel all this information, right? And so before we move on to giving them the information, they must first be the person able to use it. Let me tell you this again. Before we give them the information, they must first be the person able to use it. And so to achieve this, you have to use a process I call optimal identity creation. So imagine this simple analogy. There is this strong man right here, and there's also this fat guy. The fat man tells him that you need to work out to get in shape or to get good or something. And then the fat man says, oh, no, I don't need to because there's pain involved in working out. And so the fat man doesn't know why he should work out. And because there's pain involved in the process of working out, he doesn't, right? Because the motivation isn't strong enough. He doesn't have a strong enough motivation, as I said previously. But since you still wanted to work out because you care about him, what you do is that you say this. You say that if you don't work out, you're gonna die in 2 years. And so now the fat man works out. And if you give him the optimal workout plan or something, what's gonna happen is that he's gonna apply it because he has a very strong motivation. Now he's the person able to work out because he has the motivation. Now it's not gonna be as simple as that for your audience. This is a very simple analogy, but I think you get my point. So before sharing the tactical information, you need to first make the person able to use it. And so the way to do this is very, very simple. You have to remove limiting beliefs and you have to add new ones. And so to break it down even further for you, the way to do this is incredibly simple. All you have to do is to just ask, what will happen if I just share the framework right off the bat? And then what do I need to tell them to prevent this? For example, if here you use the motivation that wasn't so strong, for example, if you never work out, you're never gonna get a girlfriend. And the guy might have some motivation, so he starts working out for a couple of weeks, but he's in a lot of pain because there's a lot of pain involved in getting in shape, especially if you're so fat. And so he's like, this doesn't work. It's taking too long. But he still has to work out. You know that he has to work out. And so he has this limiting belief that's holding him back from doing the right thing for him because there's pain involved in that, right? And so what you tell him again as well is to remove the limiting belief is time is gonna pass anyway. So what's your better option? And now he's working out. Now it's, as I said previously, it's not gonna be as simple as this, but you get the point. Another example of this is this video you're watching right now. Before creating this, I asked myself, what will happen if I just share all of this right off the bat without giving them the belief system and the foundation they need to have to be able to execute this optimally. And so if I didn't share all of this with you, two things would happen. The best scenario is that you just apply the entire thing, you get some results, but you just stay stuck, right? Because you're not applying it optimally because you don't know and don't have the foundation. The worst case scenario is that you say, well, what the fuck is this guy talking about? And therefore, you would not apply this. So you would stay stuck and you would, your business would decline. You have to get out of business eventually because competitors will start beating you. And maybe you might even have to get a normal job, right? And it would literally be a disservice of me to let you do this. And so I asked myself, what do I need to tell you and show you to prevent this from happening? And it's this thing right here, along with many other things in this video. And right now, you have the ability to use information because you have the foundation and are ready to use it at the optimum, way or something. So now your audience, if you do this correctly, they will have the ability to use the information, but they still do not have the information, which means that they are going to lose the point, they're not going to solve the problem, and they're going to stay stuck, and their life is just going to continue getting worse and worse because problem is going to keep getting bigger and bigger. And so what you still have to do is share with them the information. And so the way we do this, why is there this line here? Let's just not look at it. Is that we have to reverse engineer the solution. And so the way you do this, once again, is that you have to ask yourself, where are they now and where do they aim to get through this? What problems need to be solved for that to happen? What action do they need to take to solve those problems? And what questions do they need to ask themselves to figure those actions out? And what extra context will they need to do so? Those two make up the framework. And so, again, this video is an example of this. Where are they now, and where do they aim to get through this? Right now, you are, let's say, 20k a month. Hopefully, if I did my targeting correctly, right? And so you want to get to $1 million per year. And what problems need to be solved for that to happen? Well, you need to be able to solve the problem of not creating enough trust in your pipeline. And what actions do you need to take for that to happen? Well, you need to manage to optimize your capture mechanism and your delivery mechanism. And so what questions do you need to ask yourself to figure out those actions? Well, these questions right here, along with the other ones I've shared in this video. And what extra context will you need to execute this optimally and to formulate the best answers for these questions? Well, this thing right here. I'm literally applying this as we are talking. And so what will happen is that when you just figure all this out and just share the framework, what's going to happen is that they're going to have the information and they're also going to have the ability to use it. So they're going to win the point, i.e. solve their problem. And so now that I have explained all of this to you, you might still ask the question of, what if I devalue my offer? Doesn't this make me devalue my offer? So here is the fun part where we collect the pips, because honestly, that's what you care about. You don't care about valuing your offer, you care about making money. And so here's how this works. When we solve the first problem, and they solve the first problem through our content and through our free stuff. So let's say this is the first problem, it goes away like this. What's going to happen is that there's always going to be a new problem. Life is all about problems. You're never going to run out of problems. And so by knowing this, all we have to do is solve the next one. And so what's going to happen is that if we do this correctly and we get them from like totally unhappy to somewhat happy but still having problems through our YouTube content. And so to better answer your question, what happens when you do this is that you trade that little amount of cash you would have made by just making them pay to solve the first problem for exceptional trust, because simply put, as I said previously, them getting results from your free stuff is the best thing for those two metrics. And those two metrics are everything, are the sole biggest determining factors of your pipeline. And so it's the best thing you can have. But also what it does is that it allows you to gain exceptional understanding on where they are, because think about who knows them best. When you have solved their first problem, you got them there. So you literally know every single thing about their business, which means that you can sell to them better than anyone else in this market, right? And additionally, if you help them make money, what's going to happen is that they will have more money to pay you. And so when we combine all of those three together with the fact that they have more money, they can pay you to solve the second problem even 3 to 5 times more. Let me just, this is crazy. This is like the most, when I discovered this, and so people like Charlie Morgan implement this, I was like, holy shit, this is the most brilliant thing ever. If you really think about it, like this is the most effective and most ethical way to build an info business. Because what's also going to happen is that a new problem is also going to appear. And so if you can solve the new problem as well, they will pay you for that because you have more trust, more understanding, and they have more money, right? So the cycle repeats until they die or something. As long as you can continue solving problems, first solution to the first problem free, you just make starting the snowball 10 times easier, right? Then you make the snowball 10 times larger when it starts. It's like, right? That's the noise you should be making when you truly understand this. But there is a very big prerequisite for the system to work optimally, and is that this system requires you to know your ICP better than they know themselves. And so every single detail about them that could be used to convert them must be known. Because think about this. The better you know your ICP, the easier you make it to make more money. And to explain this to you, through everything we've talked about in this video, to know what will happen if you just share the information right off the bat, you have to know how they operate. And so you have to know this to know what to tell them to prevent the bad things from happening. That's just an example. Another example is, well, how do I know what they actually want? How do I know, like, where is it? All of those things right here. This is just a mess, but I think you know what I'm saying. How do I know, like, what triggers get them to feel this exact thing right here? How do I know how they operate? All of those things. If you don't know all those things, this is just going to collapse. And everything we have talked about for the past, I don't know how long it's been, like probably 20 to 30 minutes, will go to shit. And normally, this approach that takes hours because you have to take all this data from all those different sources, like comments, like support tickets, all of those things, sales calls, discovery calls, coaching calls, and just manually synthesize it into an extremely detailed ICP. This might as well take you 15 hours. And because I don't want you to procrastinate on this, so you can actually implement all of this and start getting pips as soon as possible, I created an AI framework that allows you to synthesize an extremely detailed ICP in just 45 minutes or less. It's more like 30 minutes depending on how long the AI takes to its research. And in the meantime, you can just drop a go for something. And trust me, those 45 minutes are gonna be the single biggest bargain you're gonna make a business. Because unless you do this, as I said previously, every single other thing that you do after watching this video is gonna go to shit. And so to not waste any more of your time, if you want this entire thing for completely free, so that you can build out the ICP that allows you to execute everything we've talked about in this video optimally, then all you have to do is just click the first link in the description, DM me the word AICP on Instagram, and I'll send you over the entire thing so that you can get started ASAP. And next thing you know, you are the hard game on. Take care.